It's time to do that video where Kim stumbles over all of the plot descriptions for the books she read this month. Welcome to my May wrap-up! Guys, today I'm so ecstatic to be talking to you guys about my May wrap-up because May was without a doubt my absolute best reading month so far in 2016, and that was both number of books wise and enjoyment of those books wise, and I think the two things are probably correlated. The reason I powered through so many books was because I just absolutely adored, I think, every single book that I read this month, and I read 8 of them. So I'm really excited to start going through these books with you guys, and there's quite a few to talk about, so let's just get started. The first book that I completed on hard copy was The Devil by Jose Saramago. This was the Broken Book Club's May-June read. We still have a month to read it, so if you guys would like to join, head over to the Broken Book Club's Goodreads link. I will put that down below for you. This book was basically about the man of habit, kind of just, he was existing. And one day his coworker gave him a recommendation of a local film to watch, and so he watched it and he ended up noticing that one of the extras in the film looked exactly like him. This was a really interesting read. It was very different. The writing was really interesting. I'm not going to go over too much because we actually have a live show for it coming up on July 3rd. If you guys want details for that, I will link the video describing when and where our live show will be down below. Overall, I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The next couple books that I read this month were The Raven Boys and The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater, and this is the first and second book of the quartet, The Raven Cycle, and holy moly, was I ever behind on the train for these ones. The last book, the 4th book, just came out. This series follows our main character. Her name is Blue. She is the daughter of a psychic, and she's basically been told her whole life by her mother and the psychics that all live in her house that she is destined to basically kill her true love when she kisses him. The story also follows a group of friends from a local boys' boarding school, and one of the boys in particular is very interested in finding this dead king's spirit. Eventually, of course, Blue and these boys get mixed up and end up mixed up together and end up going on some crazy adventures. I ended up absolutely adoring them. The Raven Boys, the first one, I started seeing a lot of wonderful character building, wonderful character depth. All the characters were unique and they had their own personalities, they had their own quirks. When you were reading from different characters' perspectives, all the voices were unique and pinpointed enough that you could always, I think if she took the names completely out of the chapter, you would still be able to know whose voice you were reading from. She was just very, very good at making characters that were just diverse enough, but what was lovely about it was all the characters just like meshed together so well for the story. They were all just so quirky and weird in their own right, but they just came together, and the story that she's creating that I haven't finished yet has just been so absolutely wonderful. When I got to the second book in the series, I definitely saw some growth in her writing. I love Maggie Stiefvater's sense of humor throughout the book. I was laughing out loud quite a few times. I think one of my favorite things about this series is just like Maggie Stiefvater is a lady who really, really understands how to write a big finale scene in her novels. Like in both of these books, the final scenes were just like, I could not put these books down when I was reading the final scene. Both of these books got a 5 out of 5 stars for me, and I can't wait to jump right into the next ones again. My Kindle read this month was Winter by Marissa Meyer, and I done gone messed up when I bought the paperback versions of the Lunar Chronicles, because now the problem I'm having is that the paperback version of Winter doesn't come out until who knows when. The Lunar Chronicles are honestly one of my favorite series, and I was watching everybody else on BookTube read this book and rave about it, and meanwhile, I felt so left out. So finally, I just was like, you know what? I'm getting it on my Kindle. I'm reading it. I don't care that I paid for it. I'm paying for it twice. I'm just doing it. And I'm so glad that I did. I'm actually going to do a completely separate review of Winter because I did a separate review of all the other books in the series thus far. And so I'm definitely going to share some more thoughts about Winter. But overall, I thought this was a pretty good ending to the series. I felt like a little bit of it there were parts of it that were rushed and I felt could be developed a little bit more. This book was already 800 pages though. I don't want to spoil it too much for those of you that haven't dove into the series yet or haven't read Winter. But some of the things that were going on in this novel, I just felt like they were so big that they needed a little bit more time spent on them. I think I struggled a little bit because there was such a long break in between when I had read the first 3 books of the series and when I finally got around to reading this one, that for the first maybe quarter of the book, I struggled to reconnect with the characters. So I don't think that was Marissa Meyer's fault though. I don't think that was any of the writing's fault. I think that was just all on me struggling to reintegrate myself into the series. But overall, I enjoyed it and I still gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The characters that Marissa Meyer's develops are absolutely lovely and I can't rave enough about how perfectly she integrates all of these fairy tales together just flawlessly into the story. So backtracking a little bit, back to the last hard copy book that I read, it's sort of a cheat number, because it's kind of like a very, very small book, but it's Snow White by the Brothers Grimm, and I just read this today once I completed Winter because I just wanted to reorient myself with the story of Snow White, and I'm glad that I did because this just made me appreciate Marissa Meyer's ability to touch on so many aspects of the original story in her novels. I know my light is super bright, but if you can see that, it's just Camille Rose Garcia just uses a wonderful combination of font arrangement and this dark art to make just a really beautiful take on these books. Alright, and so I listened to 3 books on audiobook this month. The first was Unashamed by Lecrae. If you don't know who Lecrae is, he is a rapper hip-hop artist. This was basically his autobiography. So he was describing his life growing up kind of in the ghetto and sort of struggling through racism. He suffered a lot of abuse, and so this was his story, kind of how he got out of that. So he basically described his struggle, but also just his passion for what he's doing and why he does it. And I really liked the audiobook especially because Lecrae himself was the one that read it. I would assume that each chapter has some of his lyrics laid out in it. So when Lecrae was reading the book, he would either rap these sections or they would play the actual track that the lyrics were from, which was really cool and it definitely added to the enjoyment factor. I gave this audiobook a 5 out of 5 stars. I don't read a lot of nonfiction and I don't like a lot of biographies, but I did really enjoy this one because I really identified with a lot of what Lecrae was saying in it. The next audiobook that I listened to was Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. This book was absolutely wonderful. It's about a girl named Lou who loses her job working at a local cafe, and she ends up working as an assistant to a quadriplegic man. I went into the novel expecting it to be a romance novel, and I came out of it pleasantly surprised about it. The emphasis wasn't on the romance at all. It was just about these 2 different worlds, 2 completely opposite worlds coming together and kind of changing each other's lives. What I appreciated most about this book was that the author did a really good job of developing emotions on both sides of the argument. You know, both sides of the controversy got humanized. I ended up giving this book a 5 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I completed in the month of May was All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Another novel that I absolutely adored. And this is just a theme going on this month. I'm sort of just giving out 4.5 out of 5 to 5 stars. This was another 5-star novel for me. I listened to this one on audiobook and I absolutely loved it. Wouldn't mind rereading it on hard copy just to catch all the nuances and developments that I may have missed listening to it on audio, but this was an absolutely beautiful book. So in this book, you follow two main characters. One is a blind girl who lives in Paris, and the other is a boy who lives in Nazi Germany who's interested in electrical mechanics and stuff like that. He's really interested and really good at fixing radios especially, and you follow them kind of post-Paris bombing. What I found really interesting about this novel was there were no Jewish people involved whatsoever, and not that that's good or anything, but what was interesting about that is I haven't read a lot of Nazi Germany historical fiction that doesn't involve a perspective from a Jewish person. It definitely had a shift in focus when you weren't focusing on like the typical things that a historical fiction surrounding this time would normally focus on. You got some different perspectives, which I really liked. And another thing I loved about this book, just the character development was absolutely wonderful. There was nothing cliche or like, or rushed about learning who these characters were. There was nothing flat about these characters. They were just beautiful, and I loved their stories. I loved who they were. The story was wonderful. There was even like a certain amount of suspense to the novel because there's a different side story that comes in and adds a little bit of suspense and a little bit of intrigue and also a little bit of a thrill with it. Overall, this was just a beautiful novel. It is the recipient of a Pulitzer Prize, and for very good reason. So if you have not picked up this book yet and you've been considering it, you should definitely go do it because this book was beautiful and I will highly recommend it. And again, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, so that is it for my May wrap-up. I cannot believe the amazing month that I had. I would love to hear what you guys read in May and what you thought of the books that you read, and also I'm totally open to discussion about any of the books that I read as well. So throw me a comment down below, give me a shout out on Twitter, check me out on my new specific Broken Bookshelf Instagram that I recently put up. I'll put all those links down below for you. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys, and we will see you next time. Bye! Her evil stepmother and stepsisters. However, Marissa Meyer was just able to bring such a creative take and make it so convincing. Like, I hated her. The Dream Thieves, which is the second book in the Raven cycle. Another book that I'm in the middle on, I'm reading it on my Kindle, and that is Winter by